There's been so many awesome professional wrestlers throughout the years that has wrestled for WWE, and they never did win the WWE Championship. And when you think of names like Jinder Mahal and The Miz that somehow won WWE Championships, and as I go through my top 10 list, I think of the guys on this list that should have won WWE Championships, and some of them were poised and positioned in a way where you thought that's exactly what the hell was going to happen, but it didn't. But anyway, I am Mark Magnum. This is the Magnum Report. Thank you for joining me, and I'm going to get right into it. My number 10 is the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. Now, there was a time in the late 80s, early 90s where the British Bulldogs as a tag team, and then after they separated, the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, was just smoking red hot. They had that infamous match, him and Bret Hart, at the 1992 SummerSlam in Wembley Stadium that we still talk about to this day. They had the 1995 Royal Rumble where at the beginning it looked as if he won the match, but then that was the first year they really played into the whole 2 feet hitting the floor, and Shawn Michaels ended up sliding back into the ring and costing the Bulldog that match, and that was one of 2 of Shawn Michaels' Royal Rumble wins. But there was a time when the Bulldog was hot. He won the Royal Albert Hall that same year in 1995. So there was a lot of different things that were going on that year to where it seemed like the British Bulldog was right at that point, right on the cusp, right on the edge of greatness. But for some reason, and some of it probably is backstage or politics or some of that, stuff that was going on behind the scenes that maybe led into that. I don't know. But for some reason, he never did. And SummerSlam, like I said, is still one of these matches that to this day we still talk about. Now, speaking of SummerSlam, my number 9 is Lex Luger. Now, in 93, Lex Luger was poised to be the next WWE champion. They put him on the Lex Express. He had already slammed Yokozuna on the United States Intrepid. And it looked as if, all right, after Yokozuna's done being champion, Lex is the guy. Then we have SummerSlam that year of 93. Lex wins the match by count out. And just that whole situation made no sense to me after he sat there and went on the Lex Express, campaigned that whole time, traveled all across this country, making it seem like he's the next guy. And then for them to just do that to him. And there's other professional wrestlers throughout the years that have talked about this. And it just makes no sense that you would go through all this effort to push this guy just to not give him the chip. It made no sense to me. And just the fact that they had the celebration and the confetti coming down and the Steiner brothers and whatnot coming out to hold him up on their shoulders and make it seem like he had a great accomplishment when at the end of the day, Yokozuna was still the damn champion. So it just was a missed opportunity and a lost moment that I think they never did truly get back. They never got that magic back with Lex Luger because he did win the 94 Royal Rumble. He was a co-winner with Bret Hart. But that WrestleMania 10, he wrestled Yokozuna and lost again, thanks partially to Mr. Perfect. But it was just a situation where after that WrestleMania 10 match, he never had a sniff at the WWE Championship again. And I just feel like he could have done so much more in WWE. I know he won championships in WCW and was a WCW champion there and tag team. He did a lot in WCW, but in WWE, he never even won a title for that matter. But he's damn sure never won a WWE championship. And just the fact that they had him poised, they had him in that slot to where it seemed like he's the dude, he's the next guy, but they never pulled the trigger. Now, into my number 8, and that is Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, Jake the Snake Roberts is a guy that never won a title at all in WWE, just like my previous person, Lex Luger, never won any titles in WWE in his entire run there, which is kind of a indictment on WWE, which, no pun intended, with some of the stuff going on with WWE right now. But there's guys that it's just blasphemy to me when I look at their title history and think that Jake the Snake Roberts never won a title at all in WWE, and then he had that short run in WCW where he wrestled Sting for that spin the wheel, make the deal at Halloween Havoc, but he never really accomplished anything there either. So it's just a shame to think of the greatness and the brilliance of Jake the Snake Roberts and how good of a promo he was. And his matches, for some people I know, were a little bit slow or they were too methodical. I love Jake the Snake Roberts because his matches told a story. he made you feel something by the end of his matches. And whether it was him versus Andre, whether it was him versus Rick Rude, no matter who it was, I was entertained by Jake the Snake Roberts. And just to think he was never even an Intercontinental Champion. None of that. It's just crazy to me to think that. But on to my next one, and that's number 7. And that will go to Ted DiBiase. Yes, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. Here's another guy, just like a Lex Luger, that seemed like he was poised and just positioned in a way that at some point he's going to win the WWE Championship, and he never did. And we had the WrestleMania 4 match with him and Macho Man to determine the undisputed WWE Champion at that time, when it had been vacated after the whole debacle with Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan at the main event that they had, were the two Finkles the two Hefners, that they had referee wise, that whole screw job there, and then Andre winning the title, and then him giving it to DiBiase, and then they vacate the title, and then you have this match at WrestleMania 4 with Macho and with Ted DiBiase. And I was happy Macho won, huge Macho Man fan, guilty as charged, and I was happy that he won that match. But throughout that whole time frame, in that area, and that the WrestleMania 4 to 5, DiBiase was always around the title picture. You had Zeus come in. There was always something going on where DiBiase was always near the title in the late 80s. And then he just never won it. And he was a tag team champion with Erwin R. Shyster. And he did have some success in WWE, but he was another guy that seemed like he was right there on the edge of it. And they just never gave him that shot. They never gave him the chip. And he's another guy that I just think was a lost opportunity that should have been at some point at least a one-time WWE champion, but it never happened for him, unfortunately. Now into my number 6, and that is Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorf. Man, the greatest pile driver in the history of professional wrestling belongs to Paul Orndorf. And just, he was the perfect wrestler, in my opinion. The attitude, the charisma. You could tell he was truly a tough guy. He wasn't just some guy that was jacked up and looked tough. The Brandon Bull, he beat up Vader. He is tough. And just the fact that he was a guy, another one that was poised. Seemed like with the whole feud with him and Hogan in 85, 86 with the steel cage match and all the stuff they were doing with him, that at some point he's going to be the one that knock off Hogan. Unfortunately, that never happened for him, and he had success in WCW, but he's another guy that when you look at it, he never, ever once held a title in WWE at all. Not a singles title, not a tag title, nothing. And Paul Orndorff's one of these guys that was a polished professional, knew what he was doing in the ring. Everything he did was believable. I just watched a match of his a couple weeks ago of Paul Orndorff, and I'm telling you, like, you to this day, because you can watch some stuff from the 80s and some of it's a little clownish, or some of it is like, you could tell they weren't laying it in like they do now. But with Paul Orndorff back in the day, he was laying it in just like they do right now. And I just hate the fact that he never won a WWE championship at all. Whether it was a singles title, whether it was a tag title, he never won anything. Yes, he went to WCW, and they had Pretty Wonderful, where him and Paul Roma won tag team championships, and that was a great tag team. Love me some Pretty Wonderful. Love me some Paul Roma. Great tag team. But in WWE, he never made it. And it just this makes no sense to me how these guys that I'm mentioning, none of these guys ever somehow won a WWE championship. But we have Miz and Jinder Mahals that have somehow been champion. It just kills me. Now, into my number 5. And this goes to the ravishing one, Rick Rude. Rick Rude, another guy. He did win single. He was a former Intercontinental Champion, and they spotlighted Rick Rude and used him quite well. Everything with Jake the Snake Roberts and the stuff with him and Warrior. They had great matches, but he was a guy that, again, seemed like he was poised, and he was right in that prime position to at some point become champion. And that SummerSlam match that him and Warrior had, I believe that was in 1990, that it seemed like, all right, this might be the match. Cage match, these guys are going to go at it. They had the history from when Roode was Intercontinental Champion and he took it from Warrior, so there was already that history. They already fought for one championship. Now here they're fighting for the big title, the big championship in WWE, the WWE Championship. And he never did make it. He went over to WCW, was international champion, and he was a former United States champion. He had success wherever he went. but he's just another guy that I look back on, and it's like he had charisma out the wazoo. I mean, he was definitely that guy. He didn't need a manager. He didn't need Bobby the Brain Heenan. But those two together, when they were in WWE together, it was just the ultimate combination, because you had Heenan saying what he was going to say, then you got Roode saying what he was going to say as he's kissing at the camera. And it was an awesome combination, and he was the best part of, well, one of the best parts of the Heenan family. We'll get to the other better part, in my opinion, here shortly, but he was still an awesome wrestler that I don't understand how some of these guys Vince didn't see, even though he's one of the evilest sons of bitches I've ever seen, and some of the allegations going on with him right now are just off the wall with Vince, but I just don't see how he never pulled the trigger on a guy like Rick Rude. But we'll go into number 4, and my number 4 is the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Yes, Cody Rhodes' daddy, the son of a plumber, Dusty Rhodes, yeah, baby, all that stuff. Dusty Rhodes, I can't believe, I mean, they had the whole debacle where they did the Dusty finish on him. And that's where the phrase was coined, a Dusty finish, where it looked as if he'd won the title, holding up the title in Madison Square Garden, but nah, you didn't win the championship. And in his WWE run with the polka dots and all that, I mean, he made the best of it. I mean, he was one of those guys that went to WWE at that time when Jim Herd was in control, and, you know, you had Telly and Arn do the same thing, where they kind of went over and they left and went away just because WCW wasn't where they wanted to be at that time. And Dusty came over later on in his career, and he had the feud with Macho Man and Sapphire and that whole deal, and it was good stuff, but Dusty Rhodes never got even close to that potential that he had earlier on in his career when they teased that title to him and pulled it away. Later on in his career, when he came back with the polka dots on and all that stuff, he was just there to be a small piece of what Dusty Rhodes used to be, but he never caught that magic like he had back in the, you know, the late 70s, early 80s. By the time he had got to WWE in the late 80s and early 90s, his star didn't shine quite as bright, and it's a shame, because he's another guy that I can't believe didn't hold any gold in WWE. It's just baffling to me that all these guys I'm rifling off never had, you know, the WWE Championship. But anyway, on to my number 3, and this goes out to another member of the Heenan family, and that would be Mr. Perfect Curt Hennig. My God, I don't know where to even start with Mr. Perfect. Just the vignettes when he first came in, him throwing the football to himself, basketball, golf, and all the different stuff that he'd do just to get his character over. And then he'd get in the ring, and he was just gold. Some of the matches he had with Bret Hart were just awesome matches. And Mr. Perfect in general was just one of these wrestlers that I don't see how he never won a WWE Championship. I know he was Intercontinental Champion multiple times, and he was the perfect guy for that title at the time, because that was right after you transitioned from Warrior and Roode, and you've got the bigger guys, the bulkier guys. That, not saying that Roode wasn't athletic, but he didn't do the athletic stuff like Mr. Perfect did. And Mr. Perfect was a guy that made every other wrestler look better in the ring. Some of his bumping, even though some of it could have been a little bit over the top at times, his selling was just perfect for that era and that time frame and the guys he was working with, because Bret Hart was just the perfect dance partner for him. And some of those matches he had were just gold in the ring. And I just feel like Mr. Perfect's a guy that does not get enough love for what he contributed to the business. I know he was the ultimate ribber backstage, but this is in-ring, and he should have got a WWE Championship, and it's just crazy to me to think that he never got that. But on to my number 2, and here's another person that just baffles me, that he only has an Intercontinental title to his name and also a tag title. But my number 2 is Roddy Piper. Now, Roddy Piper, one of the greatest talkers in the history of this business. He put the talk show promo segment that we see now in WWE, the Miz TVs, and the Grayson Waller effects and the KO shows and the highlight reels and all those different talk show segments that we see now, all spawned from Piper's Pit. And all the stuff he did at WrestleMania 1, all the stuff he did at WrestleMania 2 with Mr. T, and just the fact that his record speaks for itself. He didn't lose that often. And when he did, it meant something. Like when he lost to Bret Hart at WrestleMania 8. That meant something. That meant a whole lot. Because you look back at some of Roddy Piper's matches and you don't ever see him get pinned. And he protected himself. He was one of those guys in that era where you still protected yourself. And you still made sure that, hey, I'm making sure that when I go to the next town, these people are going to boo me. So I got to keep my heat. And I can't get pinned by every single guy in the company. And it made sense. And he didn't even want to lose to Hogan. And in retrospect, I think that was the greatest thing for him because it kept his aura. It kept his shine. It kept him in that conversation of that wild, crazy guy that we don't know what he's going to do. We don't know what he's going to say. We know it's going to be wild and we know it's going to be nuts, but we just have no idea exactly what he's going to bring to the table other than just the chaos that comes with him. And Roddy Piper's a guy that I can't believe that he never won a WWE championship as popular as he was. I mean, he was in the cartoon era when they had the Hulk Hogan's, cartoons and stuff. He was one of the main characters. And as a kid in that era, thinking of Roddy Piper and just thinking of all the stuff with Cyndi Lauper and just everything as a whole, the Hollywood backlot brawl with Goldust, just all the stuff that he even did in WCW when he finally did. He won a WCW championship over there. But to me, it was at the point where WCW was kind of on the downhill slide and it really didn't mean as much as it probably should have. And it's definitely not the way I want to think of Roddy Piper, even when he came back towards the end of his career with Ric Flair and they won their tag team title. Then it was two guys over the hill still trying to get out there and stay with the young boys. It was kind of cool in a way, but it was kind of a little bit of, okay, we've had enough of this. But I just wish Roddy Piper would have at least had one WWE title run, but unfortunately he's another one that did not get that. Now into my number one and final, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Man, to this day, we have people that still talk about Flair and Steamboat. Flair and Steamboat, whether it's the Chi-Town or whether it's any of these matches that they've had throughout the years that just put Ricky the Dragon Steamboat on the map because he'd had his run in WWE. And yes, he was Intercontinental Champion. They had the great match with him, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and Randy the Macho Man Savage. That was one of the matches another one that is still talked about to this day. We still hold that to high esteem when we sit there and we do the list of top, 10 or 5 or whatever WrestleMania matches of all time. That's always in the top 5, usually in everybody's top 5 for somebody. And when I think about all the success he did have in both companies, he had success in WWE, but I think he had more in WCW, NWA, whatever you want to call it. But in WWE, he never got that WWE title push that he should have had. And when you think of him and how smooth he was, or the greatest arm drags in the history of professional wrestling, nobody did an arm drag like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. He made wrestling kind of look like ballet. Even though people say wrestling's not ballet, he made it look elegant. He made it look like this is kind of a dance. And you have to have that good guy in there like a Randy Savage. And guys like that can just flow with you and work with you. And just to think that from that WrestleMania 3 match and how good that match was. And yes, I know they had every spot worked out and that was Macho Man's thing. I get that. But to think how good that match was. And to think Macho got 2 WWE championships off the back of that eventually in his career. And Ricky the Dragon Steamboat got nothing. So it's just a shame that all these guys from 10-1 never won a WWE championship. But I want to know what you guys think. Comment in the comments and let me know what you guys think on this one and who should be, or maybe did I miss somebody? Is there somebody that maybe I missed on this list that should be on there? Let me know in the comments. But before I get off here, also make sure you subscribe to my other podcast, the Mark and the Fan Wrestling Podcast, where me and my boy, the Cisco Kid, we talk about all things wrestling back in the day, present day, AEW, WCW, WCCW, WWE. We talk about it all. So make sure you subscribe to that channel. And also make sure you subscribe to this channel. I got all kinds of viewers going on with this channel, and I'm proud of what I'm doing right now. And I'm thankful for all you guys that listen and watch and subscribe, and all the guys that comment on anything that I post. I appreciate you all. But I'm going to get off here. This has been another edition of the Magnum Report. Thank you for watching.